The problem with the game while a tank is trying to create space is that people make the tank work on their own to be like, get the space, you're not creating space. Yeah, when I'm doing stuff to create space, you have to have aggression to move with me. That's all I'm saying. You have to move with the tank while the tank is creating space. While the tank is getting counters and blowing up big moves, you now create space by pushing down. We gotta push. The tank and I alone cannot just push to create the space because the tank is just one person. You have to follow. It's like the magic school bus. The tank is the driver. Everybody else is following in the back. If your kid get left at the bus stop, I'm sorry, we don't got full power. That's all I'm saying. Now, to follow up, Groot is a different tank, right? Groot is a very tanky tank, slow-moving tank who fears Wolverine because he gets chopped down. But the reason why Groot is good and he can also solo very well is because Groot removes support from the other tank. What does that mean? That means that if there is a tank, Groot is 1v1ing with a tank, Groot puts his walls behind him, which is why the other team needs a Punisher, Squirrel Girl, or somebody to focus Groot walls so that the healers can get heals through. But in that couple of seconds while that tank isn't getting heals, your team bursts that tank down. So Groot is always going to create space because he takes the space back and he forces the tank that's fighting him to turn around or to try to maneuver to find space to actually get away from the walls if his team isn't shooting it. So he's going to be creating space easily. The problem with saying your job is to create space is that most people don't know what the fudge that means. What does it mean to create space? How do you create space? It's just a term that people says that you don't know what to do with it, right? Now, as Mag, how are you creating space? You're creating space off of the fact that your sustainability and your ultimate creates space by taking away their pushback, right? So like, let's say a Star-Lord ults a Magneto. Now the Magneto does his ultimate, his little spirit bomb absorption, takes away from that push, which makes it to where then focus that on the other team to try to get a pick or to try to get the Strange on their team to try to move out of position to go block or make the healers on the other team jump back or move out of position, which means that they're no longer healing. Once they jump back, what that means is that your team is now the aggressor. Now you're taking space and moving, but you can't really see it most of the time, but that is what you're doing, right? If you're playing Peni, Penny's gonna put down mines and Peni is gonna try to lock down space. Penny's not that easy to take space because she's not that tanky, so she's gonna be playing behind the objective or corners and locking people down to where if I'm not taking space, you can't take space from me, but I'm also controlling your diving potential and trying to get a pick. Once I get a pick, now I go in with ultimate, harass the middle of your lane to go to the back while my team is forcing down a lot of fire. Why a lot of people can't do stuff well with Peni is because you got to remember, while Peni takes off to go, the healers have to now look down lane. And you got to have it to where your DPS is following up so that she just doesn't get focused while she's disrupting. And then while that is happening, people are going to turn. Your people are going to turn to protect the healers. But Penny's just going to be circling and it's mines all around. So they're going to be jumping back. So at that point, you're going to be forcing and taking space. Right? You feel me? Right? That's how you move. Now you're playing Emma. You're going to get space regardless. You're going to play, you're going to be more of a counter tank, meaning that you use diamond form, keep up your charge, but also you can use diamond form. A Strange come in with IF avocado, grab that nigga, shut that shit down. Scarlet coming in, shut that shit down, right? You got different ways on how to shut it down. Star-Lord is getting ready to ult. You use your ult, counter his ult, shut him down while pushing the back line, forcing an ult out of the enemy's team's healers, which means that they didn't want to ult at first, but you got an early ult, which means that your team now had his ult advantage so that you could push down more because they wasted an ult to defend against a tank ult. You feel what I'm saying? Okay? So her ult is going to clear lane, period, unless there's a shield. But even so, you burst down that shield to push them back. People don't understand that when a tank is creating space and they're doing a big move, your DPS do follow-up damage. Or your DPS is playing off angle at the time, or your flanker is getting a pick at the time because you're creating what? Disruption. Because if you just let the Emma do her ult and they block it, it wasn't getting enough value. So while the ult is going on and you're causing this disarray, your DPS get in to try to get a pick, your divers go in or whatever the case may be, and your healers push down with you. There's certain tanks that's easier to create space than other tanks. That's just factual, right? You got Venom. Venom, solo tanking with Venom means that your team has to be on perfect point, because now Venom leaves to go harass the back line. What that means is that your DPS are now up front. Consider this like chess. Your DPS, you got your tank in the front, your 2 DPS, and your 2 healers, or whatever, or maybe you're running some other comp, right? Well, your 3 DPS, 2 healers, and Venom in the front. If that's what you're running, Venom takes off your 2 DPS. That's why it's good to have like a Mr. Fantastic or somebody next up if he's solo. But most of the time you want Venom with somebody else because he takes off to dive, be a menace, make the team look back. People don't understand things that they're not seeing. The healers are now focused on Venom, which means that heals aren't being pushed out to the tank and the DPSs, which means that a DPS now has to turn and look to help heal, right? And if they're taking a long time on Venom, our team should be bursting down their front units because they're focused on the Venom. That's the whole point. The problem is that people aren't understanding when to do full assaults versus truckling behind the tank. When you see disruptions happening, you got to go with big damage because they're confused. You see what I'm saying? People only know the regular strats like, oh, we made them use an ult. Yeah, and then sometimes we'll force an ult out from the opposite team, but then our healer uses an ult. Why would you ult? We now have ult advantage. Now we're back on the same timing as them. You see what I'm saying? So it's a lot of different things to go into this. Now, you got Strange, who's a main lane tank, who also has a weakness, like if he's against a Punisher or he's getting burst down with stuff like that and his shield breaks, he's going to need time to recharge, so then everybody else push up. So you got to keep up that damage while he's getting time to recharge. There's so many different things with tanking that people don't understand on how to gain space and what you're doing to acquire that space. And it blows my mind because they don't truly understand what it means. Yes, tanks do a lot of damage. They do. But at the same time, while they're doing certain counters, while you get counters out, while you get certain blocks and big moves and you force the other team to get, if a tank can force the healer to get out an ult, that is a beautiful moment, because that means that your healers didn't have to ult. So that means they have 1 healer ult while you still have 2 to actually push up on it, and it depends on your team comp. That's all I'm saying. People is like, hey, as a tank, you should be creating space. I don't think you even know how to follow for me to create space, or what your assistance is in me creating space. I just want to get that out there. There's a lot of slogans. There's a lot of things that's said in this game that players don't know what it means, because I feel like people only know how to push damage into the other team, and they don't understand what a DPS is even for. A DPS they think is just a damage per second. Do we got to change the name? Do we got to change the name from DPS to PDS? Wait, PPS, picks per second. Do we got to do that? KPS, kills per second. Do we got to change the name DPS? Because all they be doing is soaking damage into the tank without playing flank, off angle, and getting picks. The final hits are more important than just the damage, because now when you're feeding damage into the tank, what happens is that you're boosting their healers' ultimates. So while you're boosting their healers' ultimates, it is a problem for me to keep up. Now we're not going anywhere, because soon as they ult, we ult, and we're stuck in that position because we're feeding their tanks damage and they're not dying. So now heals are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because our DPS isn't playing off angles to get picks. You see what I'm saying? So I'm trying to let people understand. If you got a Captain America and the Cap don't want to switch, and he doesn't understand that he's not getting, even if Captain America isn't getting picks, if his distraction isn't strong enough to slow down the heals that the tanks are getting in the front, he is not a good Captain America. You could be jumping around, dude, I'm not dying. I'm holding my shield, I'm not dying, bro. Why aren't you guys moving in the front? Move in the front. Fuck, nigga, you gotta understand that your distraction isn't enough for us to warrant the push. So now you gotta make a change somewhere. And that's what people isn't understanding. That's why I hate When people jump, hey, I can play tank, but you don't play tank and you don't understand the concept of playing tank at a high level, or you don't understand the concept of what you're really supposed to be doing because it isn't really truly shown or explained to you in that scenario. And it is why a lot of people hate tanks. And it is why I cherish a good tank. When you're a good tank, I appreciate you because you know what to do. You know how to play position. You know how to not play out of field of view from the healer. You know when to push and you know when to back up and you know when to bait and you know what you're going to save your ult for with a counter. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Please, can we just start doing that? Understand how to really gain space and what you're supposed to do as a tank. That's all I'm saying. Please, if you need help, please. I'm on my DPS account. Why is my DPS account having a Lord Thor and a goddamn Celestial Emma and a mag pushing up there? Because I'm supposed to play DPS on this account. I have a main tank account, but I can't do it because I got to go to tank to save the day. Because people don't know how to play tank. And I got to say this before anything else. Wait, my Thor made it to Lord on this account? Hey, that's player. He must have just got there. That's player. But let's stay on point. Stay on topic. This, I got to say this before I go. I got to make another complaint about this later. This whole triple healer thing that we got going on is probably one of the worst things ever. We got people at heals. Here's the problem with triple heal. We have a DPS going to healer when they're doing bad who don't even know how to be a good healer. Now, I would rather you at DPS